the band that everybody seems to be talking about at the moment. But the chances are that you've only just heard of them. So who exactly are Wet Leg and what's their story? Let's rewind, shall we? Now, by way of a brief introduction before we kick things off, if you're new to the channel, my name is Sanjay and I make reaction, review and commentary videos about music news and technology. I'm a huge fan and proponent of indie rock music, and being an independent artist myself, I love the idea of making music at home and doing it all off your own back. So if that sounds good to you, please do consider hitting that subscribe button, it does really help me out. Back to the video. So who are Wet Leg Band? Wet Leg are a British indie rock band from the Isle of Wight, made up of Rhiann Teasdale on lead vocals and rhythm guitar, and Hester Chambers on backing vocals and lead guitar. Now, an interesting first fact here that you guys may not know: although the band tour as a five-piece, with members Henry Holmes bringing the percussion, Ellis Durand bringing the bass, and Josh Mobaraki bringing some additional synth and guitar muscle, the band are actually just a two-piece from a creative standpoint, with musical duo Rhiann and Hester rising to music mainstream superstardom over the past 3 years. In this somewhat extremely short amount of time, the band have already been honoured by the Grammy Awards. And they've also won big at the Brits this year. And they also managed to get themselves on the bill to perform live at the ceremony itself. Wet Leg's self-titled debut album was one of the most acclaimed releases of 2022. And their song Wet Dream has racked up more than 56 million streams on Spotify. But given their somewhat abrupt rise to fame, you may only just have heard of them now. Hell, maybe the Brits or the Grammys was actually the first time you'd heard of the band. So where exactly have Wet Leg come from, and how have they risen to fame so quickly? The band's founding member Rhiann Teasdale was born in Formby, Merseyside in England before moving to the Isle of Wight at the age of 8 years old. And it was there a few years later where she met her soon-to-be bandmate Hester Chambers, as well as touring members Ellis and Josh. And they all met each other around the age of 16-17 at Platform 1 College of Music in Newport. Although it would be a whole decade later before they decided to make music together as a duo. Prior to forming Wet Leg, Rhiann was known as Rhiann, regularly performing before all this on the Isle of Wight as a local musician and a pianist. Even back then, her music was garnering attention, and she became featured in The Sound of Bristol and other similar publications. As Rhiann, she's best known for releasing and performing her solo single Humdrum Drivel all the way back in 2013. Although the music was stylistically very different to the music that she would later release as Wet Leg, all of the hallmarks of a classic Wet Leg song can be found in Humdrum Drivel, especially the witty, humorous and sometimes quirky lyrics that only Rhiann could pen. In several interviews, Rhiann and Hester have talked about their adolescent years, growing up in a somewhat sleepy town in the Isle of Wight, and their love of the festival circuit when it came around each summer, and their dream of actually playing Isle of Wight Festival one day. The duo were really taken aback by the loud guitars and the festival fashion that they observed at these festivals, and it was only a matter of time before they played one of these themselves. Rhiann at the time had been quoted saying that she wasn't really enjoying life that much as a solo artist, and whilst on tour, she actually asked Hester if she would accompany her on the remainder of the tour so they could finish it together. And just like that, the band was formed. Fun fact about the band name here though. Despite the rather frisky lyrical content contained within the band's debut material, the real meaning behind the band name Wet Leg, according to the band themselves, is, quote, actually an old Isle of Wight saying used to describe people that come from the mainland. And they called them wet legs because, well, back in the day they had to get their legs wet to get from the mainland to the island that is now known as Isle of Wight. Really interesting backstory to what is a pretty cool band name. The band's first ever gig was actually at the Isle of Wight festival itself, all the way back in 2019, to a much smaller crowd and on a much smaller stage than you'll find them now. The band are quoted saying that they only had about 15 friends in the audience, and their set was reportedly only about 20 minutes. They just didn't have the volume of songs back then. But at this point, Rhiann and Hester had only really started the band with the intention of just playing a few shows in the UK. Both members at the time had full-time jobs, and the band really just started off as a bit of a hobby. Rhiann and Hester even admit to not really having any great ambition for the project. But the creation of their mega hit, Chaise Longue, changed that somewhat. In a fairly recent interview, Rhiann and Hester actually went into the detail and shared the writing process behind Chaise Long. Hester recalls that she invited Rihanna over for a sleepover and she basically just didn't leave. It lasted weeks and the chaise longue in her living room essentially just became her bed. And through repeating the words chaise longue again and again in an impromptu jam, a hit was born. The band subsequently signed to Domino Recording Company, home of great indie rock artists of the past and present like Arctic Monkeys, Franz Ferdinand, and many, many more. The band's debut single, Chaise Long, was released on the 15th of June 2021. And after racking up more than 1 million views on YouTube and other streaming platforms, the media had started to take notice. The band subsequently began making TV appearances, like appearing on Later with Jules Holland in October of the same year. The band shortly followed up Chaise Long with their full self-titled debut, which was released on the 8th of April in the following year. The album debuted at number 1 on the official UK charts. The album, self-described by the band as sad music for party people and party music for sad people, is just a barrel of laughs and pure fun from start to finish. Littered with nostalgic indie rock riffs that just get stuck in your head, simple yet witty words about the pitfalls of young adulthood, and constant lyrical repetition, the band delivered compelling sing-along songs ripe for the festival stage. Their sound, albeit not too dissimilar to indie rock bands that have gone before them, just has something special about it. Something unique that I haven't quite put my finger on just yet. The reason why the band stand out for me personally is just their lyrical content. It's that quintessential British, witty and slightly dark humour. The sort that reminds me of Arctic Monkeys' debut album all the way back in the day. Whatever people say I am, that's what I'm not. Lyrics in the song Chaise Long like, "'Cause I've got a chaise longue in my dressing room and a pack of warm beers that we can consume." Those lyrics are just such a breath of fresh air. And for me, these songs just provide so much fun and humour that I've not really seen much of in modern day music. Not since the Arctic Monkeys' first couple of albums anyway. Fast forward to the present day and the band are now embarking on a world tour. Already graduating to the main stage for the summer festival circuit and even supporting some of the biggest artists in the business like Harry Styles. The band will even get to play stadiums this year. Their rise has truly been meteoric. To date, the band have received a huge amount of critical acclaim from some of music's biggest names, from Harry Styles to Hayley Williams to even Little Sims. Their debut album was shortlisted for the 2022 Mercury Prize here in England, and at the 65th Grammy Awards this year in the States, Wet Leg won big, receiving 2 awards for Best Alternative Music Performance and Best Alternative Music Album. And closer to home, the band also won Best New Artist and Best New Group at the Brit Awards, citing the infamous Alex Turner Brit Awards speech from 2014 when the band came up to collect their award.
"That rock and roll, hey? That rock and roll, it just won't go away. It might hibernate from time to time and sink back into the swamp.
That rock and roll, eh? That rock and roll, it just won't go away." The band are clearly big fans of their fellow Domino subscribers, the Arctic Monkeys, and are eager to follow in their footsteps. So, given all of this, what's next for the band? Well, the band have actually been asked this already in a couple of interviews, and they've said that they haven't really had any chance to write any material for their follow-up album, as they just haven't really had the time or the breathing space in the midst of all this current madness. But in my view, given that the band are currently sitting tight in the eye of a hype storm, the band should just enjoy the current limelight. The pace and the size of the band's rise to fame is just something that you don't really see with bands in the present day, and as such it's just something that should be enjoyed in my opinion. I don't know, all I'll say is when it comes to mainstream music and media attention, I'm just glad that there's a guitar-based indie rock band in the mix. So there you go, Wet Leg, a band that have seemingly come from nowhere that are now everywhere. I am actually truly excited to see the band live this summer. I've not actually seen them before and a lot of their songs are very sing-alongy, so I'm thinking it will be a good vibe in the crowd when I see them. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys plan to see them or have already seen them live, and whether you rate them. And if you did enjoy the video or found it entertaining or useful, then do consider hitting that subscribe button. It does help me out. And while you're at it, if you fancy checking out some more of my content, I'll leave a link on the screen to a few videos that you might want to watch next. Wishing everybody a good week, and I will see you lot very soon.